Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. As has been stated in a number of other stories on the net about the dark web, if you don't have a reason to be on the dark web, then stay off of it. Obviously, I recommend understanding the technology. Get to know what a VPN is, understand how Tor and encryption all works, but only for the sake of knowledge and an understanding of security. I'm all about understanding technology and really getting to know the layers of the internet. But don't go looking for illegal or questionable content, because if you look, you will find it. That said, moving on to the story that I wanted to share. This happened several years ago, I would say early to mid-2000s at the latest. This was a time before the internet was this huge entity that everyone spent all of their time on, when broadband was like 10 Mbps at most, and Newgrounds was king of the internet. Back then, I was actually a contractor for web development. People and organizations that wanted to have their presence on the net would contact me, and I would discuss what they wanted, then build out websites for them. These weren't complex websites like what exists now. They were more like pages with static content and pictures, basically just, this is our company and what we do, kind of pages. It was a good paying gig. Back in the early 2000s, a lot of companies wanted their presence on the web, and I worked with a lot of local corporations. It's not super relevant, but it helps to 1. Let you know how old I am, and 2. Lets you know that I understand technology and how the web works. Back then, I was always on the web, looking into competitor sites and seeing what worked where, and pulling inspiration from things that already existed. At one point, I was talking to a buddy of mine, another tech person, and he brought up that I should consider looking at the dark web for some inspiration. At first, I was a bit confused. The only things I knew about the dark web was that it wasn't easy to get onto, and that it was where hackers and criminals hung out on the web. I asked him why he thought that I should be going to the dark web, and he made a point that I couldn't refute. He mentioned that I would probably be the only person in the area that built websites that had seen parts of the dark or deep web. Basically, he was saying that I would have a leg up on everyone because I would have an idea that they wouldn't have. I kind of agreed with him. So, after chatting with him, he convinced me, and I had him come over to set up my system for accessing the dark web. I got on and started just going through random sites and trying to avoid anything that could be illegal. And I found a neat site that worked like a wiki. I don't think it was actually the Deep Web Wiki or anything like that, but it was a collection of links very similar to it, and some of them worked. For the most part, they ended up just on dead ends, with nothing on the other side. But some of them were interesting forums and just pages with information about random things. I was happily clicking along when I came across a page that kind of looked like the original version of YouTube. If anyone has been around for a while, then you know what I mean. Old blocky page with the star ratings on the videos. What was weird to me was that a lot of the front page videos were just a black screen, and when I clicked on them, they had an overlay that said something along the lines of, "Video has expired." What was strange to me was that the titles of the videos were just single words. The first one I clicked on was titled, "Hang," There was another one that was called electric, and one called pain. Obviously, these were a bit ominous, and there wasn't much on the screen for the videos, just the title and the star rating. Hang had a 5-star rating, and it showed that it was rated 40 times for instance. I was scrolling through the front page, and I finally found a video that didn't have a black box overlay. It was titled, Shoot. The thumbnail for the video was a guy literally sitting in a nearly empty room that was trashed. I clicked on the video, and it started up pretty quick. I don't know why, but part of me was sitting there and thinking that it was going to be a fairly normal video, that it was going to be some sort of vlog or something from a guy in the thumbnail. Instead, what I got was a video of a guy sitting in this dingy-looking room with a syringe in his hand, and as much as I wanted to click away, I just sat there and watched this video as it played out. As the video started, he was just sitting there and staring at the camera, and it looked like he nodded to someone behind the camera. After a second or two, the audio cut in, and I heard him say something like, "For $300, right?" And then a voice said yes. He nodded and glanced back to the camera and basically started saying his name and location. I don't remember where he was, but he said his name was Jeff, and that he was doing this for the site for an amount of money equal to $300, and that this video would serve as his contract. Then, he ended with, "And remember kids, don't do drugs." Then, after a second, he situated himself in the chair and tied off part of his arm. Then, he took the syringe and then shoved it into his arm. Long story short, he shot whatever was in that syringe, I want to assume it was heroin, into his arm, and he was doing this for money. My guess is that this site was set up for people to do things for the audience and they would get paid for it. This was like some sort of dark web YouTube or Twitch for people to pay and watch what happened to people in certain situations. Watching this guy have a reaction to the drugs that he put in his arm was horrifying. He seriously collapsed on the floor and started convulsing. And I really don't want to remember the rest of it. I clicked off of it and went back to the main page. And at this point, the other videos became clear. Hang, electrical, pain, all of these were videos of people doing something to themselves for payment. The fact that Hang had a high rating didn't really bode well with me. And at this point, I could only imagine what happened on that video that got people to rate it 5 stars. After watching this guy drop to the floor from injecting again, I'm assuming heroin, I wasn't very curious on the website anymore. I closed the page and decided that I was done with all of that. And honestly, the sight of that guy and the thought of what the other videos most likely contained has seriously haunted me ever since.
Mr. Network. Sent in by Anonymous. My dark web story is one that actually happened recently. Within the last 4 to 5 months actually. And it's one of the most disturbing and sickening things that I've ever seen or experienced in my 32 years of being on this earth. There are some really sick people out there. And I want to say to those of you listening, stay off the dark web. Enjoy the stories told by those of us who are stupid enough to get involved in it. But don't get curious enough to drag yourself into the mud. Like most people, living in this quarantine has left me with an excessive amount of spare time on my hands. I am still employed, thankfully. But I get to work from the comfort of my living room. I'm not going to name my employer or my job title for obvious security reasons. But I will say I'm pretty much the guy on the network team that gets to sit home and watch data traffic spikes for the company's applications and websites. To be honest, I probably have one of the easiest jobs out there. I have to watch a graph system, as it shows how much data our servers are pushing and receiving. And unless we get hit with a denial of service attack, there's not much to be done. If anything does happen, I have to get on the phone and talk with the other networking guys about what actions we want to take. Then have my weekly report call with my boss to tell her that everything is working as intended. We aren't a huge company, and we upgraded our servers at the end of last year, which was perfect timing. So there's honestly not a whole lot to do on the day-to-day. Based on what I just said, you can probably assume I know my way around a computer. I've worked in IT my whole career, and I like to believe I can hold my own out there. I know how networks run, I understand data routing, and I know a lot about data encryption and security. During the start of quarantine, I started studying more about data security and such, and ended up being interested in Tor, onion routing, and how the deep web and dark web differ from the surface web. If you really want some interesting reads, you should look into Mariana's Web. It's an interesting rabbit hole. As most technically adapted people do, I got both bored and curious about what existed out there in the deeper parts of the internet. I didn't want to do anything illegal, but part of me wanted to be familiar with what content and activities existed beyond the surface. I know this is stupid, but boredom and extra time can be a terrifying motivator when you kind of know what you were doing. I went through the process of setting up my personal system to get on the deep web, installed Tails, set up Tor, got a decent VPN after some vetting, did my security checks. I started going through some of the onion links that were easily accessible. For the most part, they were innocent sites that really didn't have anything crazy on them. I was simply pursuing the pages, not getting heavily involved. I found a lot of what you would expect to find: adult content, a few illegal shop sites, various conspiracy boards and other forums. Just some basic deep web content that didn't really stand out. Then I ended up on a page that I would never have expected to see on the deep web. A dating site. I say dating site, but based on the explanation of their service and some of the profiles, I think it was meant to be more like Tinder. One night stand interactions with little or no commitment. What I found was that the dating page was set up in what I could only call categories, basically split into what you were looking for in a partner. It had categories for race, ethnicity, background, sexual preference, personal kinks, and even this section that was basically for sugar daddies. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to explain it to you. One category under the personal kinks section made me curious, as it was something I wasn't sure about. It was called Chasers. I clicked on it and decided I would spend a few minutes looking through the profiles. What I ended up finding was nothing short of legitimately horrifying. The profile I clicked on was of a middle-aged guy. He was fairly attractive, and looked like he was someone who could do well on any of the other dating apps. I was reading through who he was, trying to figure out what the hell made him a chaser, when I got to the bottom of his profile. It read the following: I'm looking for anyone who can help me achieve my lifelong dream of being physical with an HIV-infected individual. This further section further outlined how it was a goal of his to catch the disease, and that he was willing to pay almost any amount to do this. I went to another profile, and it was a young man that explained he'd been infected with COVID, and that he'll be willing to give it to anyone that wanted it for the price of a nice dinner. The third profile I went to was looking for someone to hurt or severely injure them while being intimate. And I'm not even going to explain the specifics of what he wanted, but that person definitely needed to seek help. This entire category was of people looking to catch diseases, or give diseases to each other, and a few were looking to be injured. A lot of them were willing to pay for these services, saying it was a deep fantasy of theirs. I think the most disgusting one, besides the ones I had mentioned, was a man requesting to be with a woman who had terminal cancer. There's nothing inherently wrong with being with someone who has cancer. I have no issue with that. But he was treating it like a fetish, and listed in his profile that the sicker the better. Again, he listed he was willing to pay significant amounts of money, or even take care of medical costs for this. This site cemented in my mind that there are some very, very disturbed people out there. I closed it and shut down my laptop. I won't say it was the last time I ever got on the deep web, but it definitely made me more careful about where I went, and less curious about what was out there.
I prank unsuspecting guests on the dark web for fun, and my last prank may cost me my life. Story by LEAVY. Something happened to me a few weeks ago that I planned to keep secret, but recently it has been eating away at me, and I need to speak about it. The situation involves the dark web, but it isn't like all the other stories you hear of some unsuspecting soul learning of the dark web through a friend, going on it for the first time, and browsing around until they inevitably come across some horrifying page that leave them sleepless for nights. No, this is the opposite, to be honest. I'm actually the one who would be terrifying these curious souls. You see, I'm a dark web prankster, meaning I spend my free time on the dark web messing with unsuspecting strangers. I join chat rooms and send them links to gory but obviously fake videos, and I play similar videos in place of my webcam in private chats, tricking the other user into thinking that they are chatting with a psychopathic killer. My favorite trick, though, is taking control of their cursor, manipulating the chat room and making the site unclosable unless they turn off their machine. This one gets the most screams and appalled expressions, and it is all achieved through running some simple bash scripts. Now, some people may think this is cruel, but I see it as a service, a free one at that. You see, these people come onto the dark web for these kinds of experiences. They hear somebody tell a scary story of their experience on the big bad dark web, and they want to be able to tell similar stories in a sad attempt to be interesting. They come looking to be terrified, and I ensure that they aren't disappointed. Of course, I get my own enjoyment out of it. It's a win-win. But recently, this has all changed. If you fly too close to the sun, you will eventually be burned, and I am burning. The night started like any other. I got back from work, made some dinner, and after washing up, I logged onto my PC and got to work. I jumped around a few chat rooms, but they were unusually quiet or taking way too long to connect, and when they did connect, people left before I got a chance to mess with them. Eventually, I was able to keep someone around for more than a few seconds. They were some bald dude with a gnarly scar across their nose. His ears and face were both heavily pierced, and he had a python tattoo wrapped around his neck. A tough guy, and they were always fun to make cry like a baby. The way that I usually do these pranks is I keep the screen blank until I see the person, then I choose from the collection of cam clips that I have, and I slowly escalate it from there. For this specific instance, I chose a clip of a cute girl who starts by smiling and waving. The man smiled back and began typing until a message popped up. "Hi, you're cute." "Thank you, I like your tattoo." We went back and forth typing and discussing ourselves until I decided to start the fun. I took down the video of the girl and replaced it with a video that starts with a man tied to a chair. A masked man then begins to beat the man in the chair with a hammer, and to my surprise, the man didn't seem horrified. Instead, he began to wholeheartedly laugh before sending another message. "Funny, but I prefer the lady." I replied, telling him to shut up, or the girl will get it next. And once that message sent, the man's laughter stopped and he began to stare into the camera with a cold, emotionless gaze. "You shouldn't be so rude." That message was the beginning of the end of my pranking. He began to type again, and when he stopped, my jaw dropped and my fun was over. He sent the message, and it was my full name. I quickly moved my cursor up and tried to X out of the chat, but my cursor froze before dissipating before my very eyes. I opened my console and began to frantically type some commands, but each one was denied. Slowly, the chat began to turn black with the red font, and I was in a full-blown panic now. My heart was racing, and I felt like I had spikes sticking into my arms, legs, and neck, and I couldn't control my breathing, and I was sweating profusely. All the while, that psycho was smiling into the camera with his dirty yellow teeth glaring at me as he continued to type. "Let's have a look, shall we?" The light from my webcam lit up, and sure enough, down in the left-hand corner of the screen was my terrified face staring aimlessly at the screen. My brain was screaming instructions at me, but my body couldn't react. I was frozen in fear. Eventually, I snapped out of it and stood up to turn off my computer when he screamed in a deep, grisly, distorted voice. "Wait!" This stopped me in my tracks. I looked back at the screen, and he was gone, but only momentarily, and when he returned, he was standing up leaning over directly into the camera. He lifted his hand, balled in a fist and opened it, revealing multiple human teeth, which fell from his hand and bounced off the desk beneath. He then sent the last message. "See you soon, boy." He smiled as the words in the chat room began to fall off the screen while a loud screeching noise blared from my speaker. Just then, my computer switched itself off, leaving me standing staring at my reflection on the darkened monitor. I must have stood there for at least 5 minutes before I snapped out of it and then went to bed. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time that I closed my eyes, I saw his horrifying smile, and I heard the disgusting sound of the teeth hitting the desk. I called in sick to work the next day so that I could try to relax, and I went for a run to clear my head. It helped enormously, and 3 days later, I had put the whole experience behind me. However, a week ago, about 10 days after the incident, something happened which has made me tell this story. At about 1 a.m., I was awoken by some strange banging sounds. I got up in a haze and looked out the front window to see an old maroon-colored Toyota Camry parked right behind my car, blocking it in. The banging had stopped, but the strange car had put me on edge. I had lived in this neighborhood for a few years, and I have never once saw this car. I put on some clothes and began to walk down my stairs and towards the front door. But as I did, the banging began again. It was coming from the back door, and I slowly walked towards the door, with my heart racing. The closer I got, the louder the bangs. Whatever was causing it was trying to smash the door off its hinges. I wanted to scream. "Get the hell away from my house!" However, for once in my life, I made the smart decision and ran up my stairs and got into my bedroom before barricading my door and calling 911. The operator picked up just as I heard a window smash from downstairs. "There's a man in my house! He's trying to kill me!" I screamed before she responded, telling me to calm down and to tell her my location. She asked me to stay on the line and that a squad car was close by. I heard heavy footsteps stomping up my stairs and towards my door before stopping. The operator asked, was I still there? But before I could answer her inquiry, the man started to attempt to knock down my bedroom door, and the bangs on the door were deafening. The operator kept pushing me to respond, but I couldn't. I was transfixed on the door, and how with every sickening thud, that psycho got closer and closer. And suddenly, I could hear sirens in the distance, and the banging stopped, followed by the sound of quick steps speeding down the stairs. And shortly after, the sound of a car starting and speeding away. A few minutes later, the lights from the sirens illuminated my room, and this broke me out of my frozen, fearful state, and I moved the barricade and ran down my stairs and out the front door to the police. They questioned me for some time and searched around my house. They found shoe and axe marks on both doors, and my bedroom door had a massive hole in it from where the lunatic was cutting it. I gave them my full statement and told them everything. When all was finished, they drove me to my friend's house as I couldn't stay at mine anymore. The next day I rang my landlord and canceled my tenancy, which cost me my deposit and cancellation fee. And I've been staying with my friend while I look for a new place. I haven't been sleeping at all, and I'm terrified that that psycho will find me again. The police found no evidence that could be used to find him and bar the camera, but there are thousands of them in that state alone. I fear for my life every day, and I'm unsure if I'll ever be safe again. So, stay off the dark web. It is mostly used by jokesters, but it only takes one wrong click to put your life in danger. And here are the top comments from my last video. Welcome to Miss Creepy Tales Riddle Time. If you know the answer, feel free to leave it in the comments, and the winner gets to be featured in the next video. Take one out and scratch my head. I am now black, but once was red. What am I? Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, Your fear feeds me.